Thanks for joining us for Veterans Voices, honoring those who serve. I'm Constance Jones.
And I'm Natalie Calibat. With Veterans Day coming up on November 11th, we are honoring the men and women who help protect this country.
Over the next half hour, you'll hear the stories of battle and the stories of returning home. Here in Richmond, the Virginia War Memorial honors the state's fallen heroes and holds more than a dozen exhibits, along with a shrine of memory.
The shrine has the names of the Virginia men and women who died during World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Persian Gulf War. Well, for one Virginia veteran, his words to live by are not I, but we. Retired Army Major Anthony Grant recently celebrated his 100th birthday, and now he's reflecting on the war and his life nearly 80 years after. He shared some of his experiences with Don Roberts in Hampton.
I am doing great. It's a wonderful afternoon. Just a little cloudy in Hampton, but otherwise a great day.
That positive attitude and a sharp memory have been hallmarks of Mr. Anthony Grant of Hampton. He was 21, living in New York's Harlem borough.
I was working as a printer's apprentice. Eventually, of course, I became a journalist.
Grant was born in New York, but spent most of his early years in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. Shortly after returning, he was drafted.
I realized that once I got into the Army, my life would be changed forever.
Grant trained at the Army's Fort Dix, New Jersey, and Fort Lee in Petersburg, Virginia. And that's where he got his first real dose of racism in the armed forces.
We had to leave the base and go to the town, and we had to load the buses. And the buses would load all the white troops first.
Attitudes in Mississippi were about the same.
My commanders, they forewarned the black troops, especially those from the north, to be very careful when you visit the town. So there was a town called Grenada, Mississippi, and I was in the camp near the base for 6 months, and I went in town only twice, and only spent 15 minutes, just walked 1 or 2 blocks and came right back, because I didn't want to give the police any excuse.
Grant, like many blacks in World War II, were assigned to the Quartermaster Corps, loading, storing, and delivering supplies to troops on the front lines. And in June of 1944, those front lines were Normandy, France, days after the massive Allied attack known as D-Day. More than 150,000 American, Canadian, and British troops landed on beaches stretching some 50 miles of France's Normandy region. By the time Grant and other supply troops landed, the beaches were cleared.
Within the beach itself, it was a complete chaos. Burned equipment, abandoned clothing, abandoned shoes, abandoned helmets, burned out jeeps.
And as the combat troops pushed forward toward Germany, that's when Grant's troops came under fire.
I've been shot at, and I in turn have shot my weapon, but there's no immediate like hand-to-hand or person-to-person exchange.
After the war, Grant moved up the ranks in the Quartermaster Corps while serving all over Europe, Korea, and Japan. He retired after 20 years with the rank of Major in 1963. Meantime, Grant and his wife Bernadette raised 2 boys and 2 girls, including Jean. Bernadette died in 2015 after 67 years of marriage, 9 grandchildren, 6 greats, and 1 great-great-grandchild.
You've reached the right age of 100. Do you have a secret for longevity?
Have a positive mind. Have a positive mind. Things will get better tomorrow.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Don Roberts.
A West Point graduate and now Virginia resident is using his experience as an Army captain in Vietnam to push for change. Tony Nadal led a company into battle against the North Vietnamese in 1965 during the Battle of Ia Drang. American troops were outnumbered by thousands. In Nadal's company of 17 of 95 soldiers were killed. When Nadal returned to the United States, he took what he learned in combat and sought to modernize the Army. At that time, he says West Point freshmen were abused as they went through the initial plebe system.
I'm proud of both of those things. You do a good job running your rifle company and you get medals and things and so forth, and heroism and so forth, but that has that much impact. The stuff I did with leadership and organizational effectiveness had that much impact.
Nadal's experiences in the battle were turned into a book and movie titled We Were Soldiers.
Well, every war hero has a story to tell. Some just take a little bit longer to tell it. 7 decades ago, that was the case for war hero Eddie Sternot. Jeremy Hubbard has a report from Colorado tonight.
Army veteran Bill Lynn has a warehouse full of military mementos.
To us, this is very personal.
But this
is the artifact here just below my hand.
This might be his most prized possession. It once belonged to Eddie Sternot, who got the Catholic prayer book as a little boy. A few years later, he took it with him to World War II.
Where on the 13th of January 1945, he was killed in action in a place called Bois Jacques.
Sternot was buried here in this American cemetery in Belgium, but his book, it stayed on the battleground. 60-plus years later, fate brought it to Bill Lynn at a church service nearby in Belgium, honoring Battle of the Bulge heroes. A woman approached him.
And she explained that her father was a woodcutter in 1947. He was chopping wood in that forest. This book, as it turns out, had his name and address in Wisconsin inside.
So Bill did some research and found out just a week before Eddie died, he did something heroic. He and his men held off a German attack while taking tank fire. He no doubt saved American lives.
This is to certify that the President of the United States of America has awarded the Bronze Star Medal to Staff Sergeant Edmund J. Sternot, United States Army.
Last Veterans Day in California, 75 years after his death, Eddie Sternot finally got a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart.
It's wonderful.
And there to receive those medals was his little cousin Dolores, his only living relative.
And I'm glad he finally got his due justice.
All thanks to a veteran who helped write this little book's final chapter.
The worst thing is not to die in combat. The worst thing is to be forgotten.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Jeremy Hubbard.
Monica Southall's life changed in an instant. While serving in Afghanistan, she was wounded in an accident, but her love for sports helped her cope and made her stronger. I sat down with Southall to help share her story.
We were a part of a forward operating base, which was Shank, that was constantly under attack. And they were also an artillery support base, so you never knew if the bombs you were hearing were incoming or outgoing.
In September of 2009, Monica Southall was a part of one of those incidents. She was working on top of a mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle when bombs from an airstrike landed too close. Monica Southall's knees, shoulders, and spinal cord were injured. Between 2004 and the present, Southall has had 27 surgeries.
What I remember of that day, I was on top of one of the MRAP trucks doing inventory, and I remember my soldier coming to me and saying, "Hey, Sergeant Southall, come here for a second." And I was like, "Okay, just 1 second." And before I could even get to him, I heard it. I heard the bomb. I saw it, and I tried to get off the truck, and yeah, I fell. So that's pretty much my memory of that day.
Southall is not angry from the experience, but is honored to have fought on the front lines for our country.
It was something I'm very proud to say that I served and I was able to do my part to try and keep America safe. If I wasn't medically retired, if I could have stayed in the Army, unfortunately my injuries were too severe and I had to be medically retired, but I was hoping to do 20 years, and if I had a chance to go back to Iraq or Afghanistan, even now, I would still go.
As a former athlete, Southall has always made her way back on the track as an outlet to help give back through sports.
Sports have always been very important to me. When I came back from Afghanistan, unfortunately, I wasn't able to play the sports that I played prior to leaving.
But competing fell back into the lap of Southall as she was asked to participate in the Warrior Games and Invictus Games, where wounded veterans compete.
This is my very first gold medal.
A platform where she excelled, winning 5 gold medals in discus, shot put, and sitting volleyball.
Sometimes you need an outlet, or you need a reason to get up. And the games to me were a reason to get up every morning and train hard and just try and do my best, to compete, not only in life, but at the games as well.
The games not only served as a means of exercise and competition, but allowed Southall to meet Prince Harry, a memory she will cherish forever.
So in the picture, he's actually holding my medals, and he gave me the picture. So I thought that was very awesome from him, because he's a very busy person, he has things to do, but he was willing to take 2 seconds to give me the picture that he promised. What we try to tell the athletes.
Southall continues to stay involved as as a coach.
I love giving back. I love being able to show other soldiers what I've learned through the games and what I've experienced and what I've been through, and also just pass on anything that I've learned as a soldier medically as well.
South Hall's service and her perseverance in the face of adversity is an inspiration to us all. For Veterans Voices, I'm Natalie Calibat.
Still ahead, a Norfolk sailor says there's a need in the military that's not being met. What she's doing to make sure that fellow service members receive care packages on time.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. After traveling the world as a journalist in the Navy, one sailor from Norfolk, Virginia felt there was a specific need in the military that was not being met.
Yeah, Chelsea Mandello found a way to give back to her fellow service members in a big way after her time in the Navy ended. Katie Collette has the story.
For many service members and their families, Troopster is their lifeline to each other.
We are essentially the Amazon of military care packages.
The idea for the nonprofit sparked in Second-Class Petty Officer Chelsea Mandello's mind while serving in the Mediterranean during sequestration, a time of military budget cuts and extended deployments.
I remember we hadn't received mail in 3 months. And finally we were receiving this large shipment of care packages.
Chelsea's mom sent her a giant care package, but
everything in it had gone bad. Things had broken, things had melted.
So when 7 years of service and world travels with the Navy ended with an honorable discharge, Chelsea launched Troopster in November of 2015. Everyone who works there is a veteran.
We're all service members who have been deployed, who know what these active duty members are going through, and it means a lot to us personally.
This veteran says Troopster guarantees products will arrive in great condition to active duty service members anywhere in the world. And those serving without a family support system?
We actually travel across the nation where we work with different businesses and local organizations to hold community-wide pack events. And so those pack events, we work with these sponsors to send anywhere between 500 to 2,000 care packages, often to troops who don't have that family support network.
Chelsea makes it clear, just because her time in the Navy has ended does not mean her service has.
Now, the way I see it, I'm still serving my country, but in a new way.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Katie Collette.
Well, in Virginia, one veteran has set up a retreat for other veterans along with their family and friends. It's meant to be a break from the daily struggles that many veterans deal with. Alexandria Limon tells us more about Veterans Retreat at Bull Run.
Pierre Larkin is a veteran who retired after 32 years of serving in the Marines, Air Force, and the Army.
I was angry, I was upset.
That's when Larkin found Willing Warriors. Shirley Dominic, a 22-year Air Force veteran, is the co-founder of Willing Warriors, the nonprofit that runs the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
And they can be cared for here like never before.
She says she was inspired to open the retreat for veterans after a challenge at church to help others.
Going to visit the wounded warriors at Walter Reed.
So that 40-day church challenge turned into what she calls a life-changing decision to purchase this 11,000 square foot estate with sweeping views of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Lots of them have appointments day after day that they have to get to, and this is really taking them out of that environment.
The house is wheelchair accessible and equipped with a theater room, games, playgrounds, and a memorial garden. And they can have gourmet meals prepared for them and their guests at the home. Willing Warriors also partners with other nonprofits in the area, like the Mighty Oaks Foundation, that provides post-traumatic stress training to groups of veterans from around the country.
22 veterans a day commit suicide. 22.
In his thank you letter to Willing Warriors, Larkin wrote that every time the retreat doors open, you have reduced the 22 a day loss by 1. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Coming up, we'll tell you about one man's mission to give a voice to every U.S. service member killed in World War II.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. More than 400 men inside the Navajo Nation, known as Code Talkers, played an important role during World War II. The Navajo language is complex and only known by a small group of people. So young Navajo men were recruited by the military to use their language as a communications code. In battles across the Pacific, Code Talkers would send thousands of messages. Their code would never be broken by the Japanese.
It's hard enough writing one biography. Imagine trying to write 400,000 of them. A history buff is on a mission to do just that. Jeremy Hubbard shows us how he hopes to give a voice to every U.S. service member killed in World War II.
We see a field of heroes who served their country. But Don Milne,
when you look at his date of death, it says June 5th, 1943.
Right here, he sees thousands of stories desperate to be told, and he wants to tell as many of them as possible.
His location on the ship, he probably was killed by the torpedo.
Milne lives in Utah, but visited Denver's Fort Logan National Cemetery as part of his new project, Stories Behind the Stars. His goal is to compile short histories of each of the 400,000 plus American service members killed in that war.
I got into this because I started just as a hobby because my kids are older and I have some free time. Every day I would write the story of someone who died during World War II.
In the end, he wants to create a searchable database, even a smartphone app, so users could visit a place like this, scan a name on a headstone.
Yep, that's his story, and we've got it all written here so someone could read it while they're visiting his gravesite.
And be taken straight to a webpage that tells the soldier's story.
And I think it'll give them an idea of what freedoms we have in this country because these people paid the price.
It isn't going to be easy. So far, he's only compiled about 1,200 profiles. So he's enlisting help researching these enlisted men and women. He wants family members and friends to submit stories about their heroes who died and volunteers to help write about these historic men and women.
They just visit grave sites, find a name of someone who died in World War II and write their story. If you can write an obituary, you can do one of these stories.
His objective may seem ambitious, overwhelming, and impossible, but compared to the goal these heroes fought for in faraway lands more than 75 years ago, it's the least he can do. For Veterans Voices, I'm Jeremy Hubbard.
Still ahead, we'll show you how an organization in Virginia is using man's best friend to change the lives of veterans with PTSD.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. They fought in the forgotten war, but the stories of some Korean War vets are no longer forgotten, thanks to a portrait photographer shining a spotlight on their service. John Reedy is traveling the country arranging portrait photo shoots for Korean War vets. 70 veterans will be featured in a new photo book that will be delivered free of charge to schools and museums around the country.
This is probably the most meaningful work that I've done in my career. I mean, nothing kind of compares with leaving something that, you know, has a legacy and has an impact.
Reedy's book is expected to be released sometime next year.
Well, many say that dogs are man's best friend, but for some military veterans, that is an understatement. Service members who survived war zones often face a number of challenges. Many suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. I spoke with a special group in Charlottesville, Virginia, helping to change lives one canine at a time.
Dottie? Dottie, watch me. Okay, let's go. Girl. This is Dottie. She is 19 months old and she is a black lab. She's been paired with me.
After 7 years in the Army, Michelle went back to civilian life, but it wasn't easy.
For me, basically, it is climbing Mount Everest every time I leave my house.
Michelle was having trouble going out in public. Eventually, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Simple task for a person without PTSD, I should say, is something that I cannot do. For example, going to the grocery store is a task I'm not able to do. I'm not able to go to Target. Walmart, forget it.
Like many veterans, she's gone through a list of treatments and therapies to no avail until she learned about Service Dogs of Virginia, located in Charlottesville.
My hope for having Dottie is that I am finally able to return to a normal life again, that I am able to have a sense of normalcy back in my life. Good Girl, let's go.
But getting a dog like Dottie is easier said than done. It cost approximately $40,000 over a 2-year period to raise, train, and place a successful service dog with a person in need. Sally Day serves as the Director of Development at Service Dogs of Virginia.
I do everything I can to raise funds. We do not pass on that cost to our clients. I write grants. We have individual donors. I get corporate sponsorships.
Since 2000, the organization has placed over 95 dogs with clients throughout Virginia.
How do you guys go about placement? I imagine there's a long list of people who are needing assistance.
When service dog organizations began, they all started with a waiting list because there was so much need. Essentially, we're trying to meet the need that's out there, and that's why we have grown.
Today was day 2 of transfer camp for the dogs and the new owners. It's a little different than in years past with social distancing and mask wearing. Each dog here is being paired for different clients with different needs.
Go in.
Michelle excited about her new relationship. In 2 weeks, they'll be out on their own.
This is just a tool for me to carry around with me. This is going to be like having my best friend with me wherever I go.
She hopes by sharing her story, other veterans will be inspired.
I think it's extremely important. Not all wounds are visible.
Knowing that it's okay to ask for a helping hand or paw to guide them through a difficult time.
I would encourage them to reach out, seek the help. Nobody's going to look at you differently.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Constance Jones. Now, before the dogs even make it to transfer camp, they have to go through 18 months of training. To learn more about Dottie's journey on becoming a service dog, check out our website at WRIC.com.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us for Veterans Voices, honoring those who serve.
You can find everything you saw today and much more on our website at WRIC.com.